Good evening. Since this is the Wells Springs Reorganization meeting, I get to begin before we appoint a board chair. So this is the once a year that I have a little bit of control, and then I see this to the chair. So I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:01. Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is to nominate a board chair. I'd like to open the floor for any nominations.
I'll nominate Eric.
Okay, we have a nomination for Eric. Any other nominations? We have not technically approved Robert's rules, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay. All right. Congratulations, Eric. I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right. Next order of business is to nominate a vice chairs. There are nominations for vice chair. Amanda?
I'll nominate Meredith.
All right. Nomination for Meredith. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Second by Matt. Any other nominations? All right, all those in favor of Meredith as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Congratulations, Meredith. All right, moving on to clerk. Again, we look for a nomination for board clerk. It's not a very stressful role, but it has its purposes. No takers? Anyone who hasn't filled a role before?
I have before.
You have?
Yeah, I'll do it again.
Okay.
I also have not
Oh,
filled the role, so I'm not eager to do it, but I can step in.
Okay. Okay, so
I'll nominate Matt.
awesome. I was just going to say, all right. Nomination for Matt as board clerk. Any other nominations for board clerk? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Matt is our clerk. All right. Moving on to our GRCSU voting members. So we need 3 people for this. Any volunteers?
I would like to continue.
I'll probably like to continue serving on the GRCSU board as well. Does anybody else?
I'll continue if nobody else wants to take the spot. Meredith, do you want on?
I'm willing to do it. And maybe this is a point where we select alternates for this position, because we want to make sure we have our 3 votes
Yeah.
If somebody can't attend.
And I know in the past for the GRCSU board, we've been able to fill like vacancies and stuff like that with any Wellsprings member.
Okay,
And I think that can still,
so we don't need to make a motion to allow any.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and we've done that before and it's worked out pretty well just as far as, having that representation and that.
I'll step back and Meredith, it's all you if you'd like. That's fine. And I can fill in if anybody needs a fill in.
Okay.
Okay. So we need to make a motion to appoint Meredith, Eric, and George as our GRCSU voting members.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Amanda. Any other discussion on this? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. All right, set regular meeting schedule. We're currently set for the second Wednesday of the month. I think that's, my opinion, I think that's worked out pretty well. A lot better than the first Wednesday of the month. And it also lines up better with other board meetings and also GRCSU board meetings as well. And policy, sure. So is there any objection to keeping the current meeting schedule the same? All right. Hearing none. We'll need a motion to set this second Wednesday as our regular meeting schedule.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by George. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Set date of annual board retreat. Okay. I think we can do this at a later time. If there's, because usually there's a discussion behind the next board retreat as well, in my opinion. So if there's no objection, I think that we could table this discussion for another meeting.
That'd be an agenda item on,
Yeah, probably. I mean, it really kind of comes down to, as we talked about last month, the work plan and how far we've gotten and the need for having a retreat. So, all right, hearing none, no objection to that. We'll table this and have it as an agenda item in the future. Set date of our annual meeting is already, that's because that's set by the correct thing. All right. So I don't even think we need a motion for that, do we? Okay. Affirm Robert's rules for small boards. We need a motion to adopt this.
I'll make that motion.
Discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Review and accept the SBA Code of Ethics. Is everyone that That's in the materials, I believe, the packet or the online drive materials.
Yes.
All right, so if everyone's reviewed it, I know in the past we've accepted them as a motion as well. So if someone would care to make a motion to that effect.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by George to accept the VSBA Code of Ethics. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? I thought everyone was frozen for a second. Sorry. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I think Mary's
Mary's frozen.
Yeah. Matt was sitting very still. Okay, moving on to board operating protocols. Like last year, we adopted these, and so they're up again for review and adoption. So I would ask that if there's any amendments to this, if they're done, we'd also be looking for a motion to adopt these as well. And are there any questions pertaining to the board operating protocol? Okay. Not hearing anything. So I'll go ahead and move that we adopt the board operating protocols. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, motion carries. Identify locations where agendas and minutes will be posted. I believe those are still at the schools and town offices. Is where we have always had them posted.
Do they have to be at 3 locations? Or is it online at 2 locations?
Posted in 3 places. So if we typically do at the central office, we look at town offices, and we're also will post on websites as well.
We do the post office. We've done that in the past.
Yeah, but I don't know if we have in a long time.
Yeah, I think last year when we organized, we did, but I don't know if they were actually posted at the post office.
Yeah, who would have been doing it?
Exactly. And I think, but the online, the schools and the town offices should be enough.
Okay.
That's my thought on it. All right, so we have schools, website. All right, we would like to move this.
I'll make that motion.
There it is. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Firm choice of attorney, I believe, well, Chris Leopold is our current attorney and recommend we stick with him.
It's gonna be around another year.
This may be his last one. He's looking to ramp things down after this year. So.
Okay. All right. So I'll move that we affirm Chris Leopold as our choice of attorney. There's no discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carried. Identify media sources. I'm stuck with the Lakes Region Free Press. I can't remember if we added Rutland Herald to that last year or if we removed it, but I think we removed it last year.
Yeah, because it's not cheap.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So Lakes Region Free Press. Try to make a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye.
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 Carries. Authorize the administration to request and expend available grant funds from the Agency of Education as well as state and federal funds. We definitely need a motion on this. And basically, well, are there any questions related to this? I think for most everyone. This hasn't changed from year to year. So,
I'll make that motion.
all right, motion by George. Any questions, concerns, discussion on? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Authorize the board to borrow funds for Unified Union School District pending receipt of payments. State Education Fund. Again, we need a motion
I'll make that motion.
by George. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Authorize the board chair to sign director's orders and other documents on behalf of the board as necessary.
I'll make that motion.
Any discussion on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. All right. Wells Springs Committee representatives, facilities, build. So two people who would like to be on the facilities committee.
Eric, I wouldn't mind stepping up and being a part of that committee.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'll continue. No one else wants it. I'd like to continue.
Okay. All right. And before I continue though, as we get into the committee assignments, I just want to just kind of emphasize that, the committee meetings, do require a quorum. So it's really important that, that you can commit the time to attend the committee meetings. All right. So we have Mary and George for the facilities committee. Matt?
Is it possible to put any so if we have two for facilities and one person can't make it, then what does that mean? That meeting can't happen?
Yeah, so the facilities committee it's not two board members. It consists of the administration, facilities director, and two board members. So it's not just the two board members, if that makes sense.
So all four have to be present in order to have the meeting?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
what you would, yeah. And typically, for example, like the facilities committee, usually meets just before one of our regular board meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So there's never really been an issue with not having enough people there for it, but and I made that comment just as a whole, as we get into the
Yeah.
other things, so.
Yeah. So I guess my second question is, could we have some sort of vote on some sort of clause similar to what we're doing with like the GRSU meetings where a board member could step in if one of the community members isn't there to fill up that quorum? Like, does it have to be that specific board member that originally signed up?
Correct. I mean, we've done that with some of the other
Community
committees.
engagement.
Yeah, as far as like
Okay.
alternates go, I don't see why not.
What happened?
I mean,
So Eric, these are meetings which anyone can attend at any time.
yeah,
Because committees aren't taking any action. They bring recommendations back to the board. So there's really not a vote that takes place during committee. So the whole board could show up at a committee meeting.
Are they're warned?
Yes, they're warned, yes. But it's warned as a committee, not, so you don't need a quorum of board members. It's a committee of
Right.
individuals. So.
yeah, and you know, with the assigned committee members, for example, you know, if he's right, you know, the committees usually they don't really have any authorization, but the whole intent is to bring information to the board. And so there are times where decisions need to be made as far as recommendations. And so that's why you have basically members who are assigned to that committee who can actually, let's say, vote, for example. So let's say hypothetically, the whole board did go to a facilities committee meeting just to observe or listen in. Well, the two that were at this meeting who are, you know, appointed to that committee are the ones who really have, I guess, the say in what's being recommended, if that makes sense.
That smells really good.
It does. Thank you.
But as far as like an alternate goes, I don't see why it would be an issue if one person couldn't make it, someone else to fill in.
I mean, if anything was long-term, you know, like someone was going to be out 2-3 months or something like that, then we would probably take action to replace that person on the committee.
I'm just yeah, and also I guess my idea was sometimes like maybe I have a work trip or something comes up. Don't want that stalling the work of the committee because I can't attend and I won't make up the quorum, or maybe someone in the facilities committee couldn't attend, but we still want the meeting to go on. So I was just wondering if there's like a blanket statement that we could have for all committees where an alternate board member could step in and that would suffice to actually have the meeting take place.
You could still attend by phone or video, right? Any of these committee meetings. So if you were away, that's still a possibility.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I think we could, you know, by unanimous consent, if there's no objection to having alternates, then we can carry on with that practice. I'm not hearing any objections, so. Okay. All right, so we have Mary and George on Facilities Committee.
Hiring committee.
Yeah, so we would like to move appointing Mary and George to the Facility Committee.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Meredith. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Hiring Committee. Just have one person for this. Who would like to be on the hiring committee? No one?
I'm willing to do it. It doesn't, that's another one that, you know, depending on when the interviews are.
Right.
I'm fairly flexible, but you know,
It might be good to have an alternate
yeah,
for that one.
I felt like that was issues last year.
Yeah, and I can fill in as an alternate, and it really depends because
Yeah.
interviews come up and you can be, we have day lives. All right, so we'll put Meredith, and I can serve as an alternate, fill in as needed.
I can serve as an alternate too.
Well, that's good. We know who to contact if Meredith can't make it. All right. Who wants to move this?
I'll make that motion.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carried unanimously. All right. Community Engagement Committee. So last year we tried to expand the Community Engagement Committee. Didn't work. So I think I have a thought if we need to continue the Community Engagement Committee to possibly have 3 board members on the committee, but only like in a way where if the board wants to basically assign the committee a task, we'll have 3 people on the committee unless folks feel that the committee should continue as whole. It's just my opinion. So
we've had some discussions on that, and about the amount of time it seems to take to get things done, going back and forth, because again, as a subcommittee, we can make recommendations, but the full board has to approve any action. And we had discussed whether having a work group, like, let's say the board decides we need a survey. We'll have a couple people maybe put that together and bring it back to the board directly in a month or whatever the time period is, as an alternate way to do this.
Yeah.
So in a sense, the whole board is the Community Engagement Committee.
yeah, and you know, I had a thought to that too as well, where maybe every other month community engagement is on the agenda. As part of one, the board goals, and 2, just to have that discussion, and if any ideas come up. So
I mean, we're hopeful we're going to see some direction with this survey as to how the community wants us to communicate with them. What are those avenues? And that's, once we get some answers there, then focus on that.
any thoughts?
So to recap, the community engagement is sort of gets absorbed by the board, and every other meeting we discuss something we could do with community engagement.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Amanda?
Could we maybe have something saying community engagement does something at least until, I don't know, April, just to complete the survey work that we've already started, and then ask the board to take over and help, just because we're kind of mid-task on that. I don't want it to get lost for 2 months.
All right, so would the 3 of you like to continue on to complete that work?
Yeah.
Matt, George, and Amanda? Okay.
It's good with me.
All right. Sounds good. Me as well. Amanda?
The only thing, Eric, is in the last meeting, the last set of minutes, we didn't put an end time on the survey. So if we're doing that tonight, we may need to put an end time on that just to make that correction, because we kind of said we were collecting survey results until, but we never said when. So I don't know if we need to put a date on that tonight or not.
So you've had the survey for a month. So,
Yep, just about a month.
so I don't know, we could say, maybe the end of, you should be able to complete the work by the end of May.
That sounds fair. I think that's good.
Okay, all right, so, Mary Beth? Mary?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, have you had a good show of people responding to that, the survey that you sent out? I'm just wondering, like, ballpark, if you had maybe half the parents, 75% of the parents.
So we haven't done terribly. I was really hoping to get more on voting day, but that just didn't happen. So far we have ballpark around 30-ish
And that's for both schools?
for both schools. Most of it is parents. I was hoping to get more taxpayers and community members.
Amanda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can have a much larger conversation about that, like, later, but yeah.
So
we
30
need-
or 40.
Yeah, we need to finish reorganization and.
Okay, sure.
But once that work is complete, and I would imagine the community engagement committee meetings are still have to be warned, and so, feel free to join in on those too. I'm sure they're going to be talking about that soon. So I'll move that we appoint Matt, George, and Amanda to the community engagement committee to complete the survey work by the end of May. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Matt?
I'm in favor, sorry. In favor.
Okay, motion carries. PRC subcommittee representatives, finance.
Right now, we're not nominating for finance,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that would be negotiations.
Well, finance. Is fine. I wondered about this. I looked at it. And I was
Other
like,
boards haven't been nominated one, so that's something we can talk about the GRCSU, and we can nominate at a later time if the SU board want to bring that back up.
right. I kind of wonder, at some point if it might be, if it would make sense to have a Wellsprings Finance Committee. Sure. But I don't know how that would work. But
Well, I think as you discuss consolidation, I think there's some financial aspects to that, so like, if we have a facilities committee, it may make sense to have a finance committee as well to look at logistics and, provide reports to the board overall.
okay. Yeah. And then I think, other districts out there, their finance committee, they actually go over like the warrants, and really look into those as well. And so when we have warrants on the agenda, there's, similar to like reports and stuff like that, there's information behind them, but okay. So we'll just move on to negotiations committee. Let's see, Meredith, if you want to continue that.
Sure.
Okay. I'll probably hop on the negotiations committee as well, unless someone else is dying to do negotiations. All right.
Is that something we should have
Oh, yes.
alternates for?
Yeah. So, yeah. So we'll be looking for a third person for this as well. There's only 2 spaces on there, but I think other districts in the SU are having like an alternate on there. And so I think the expectation would be that in order to keep up with what's going on in negotiations, all 3 people would attend, but there's only 2 voting members. So,
How often does it meet?
That depends, Matt. It could be once a month, twice a month, 3
More-
times a month. It really just depends on, so you might actually meet negotiations, might be need for a meeting outside of negotiations just to discuss. So it really depends.
It's more upcoming because there are contracts that need to be updated.
Yes.
So after not having met much over the last year, we've got to meet again. Start a meeting again.
Any takers?
I'll do it.
Okay, so we'll have George, myself, and Meredith. All right, any objection? All right. So we'll approve that by unanimous consent. Policy committee. I'm gonna step up to this one again, just because there's
It seems of it.
no, because we're almost done. We're almost done with the policy manual.
Well, that just made you gonna start again.
Anyone supposed to get on policy? My answer is no. Amanda?
Do you foresee policy meeting at the same time, 5 or 5:30 again, or do you think it may meet later this year?
It's really hard to say because everyone else is reorganizing and it really comes down to schedule. Where the committee is going to basically determine what time to meet. And but if I had to guess, I would say it would probably stay the same. Right now, we're meeting at 5:30 on the fourth Monday. Yeah. Does that work for anyone? Let's see. Matt,
Voluntold? Yeah, I'll do it. Let's do it. Let's go.
Amanda?
Sorry, my button stuck there for a second. I'd be happy to fill in if needed. I could try. So Matt, if something came up, I know you travel sometimes. I work until
Yeah.
5:30, so I can't count on me all the time. But if I knew a little advance, I could try to work something out.
Cool. Is it in person or
No, it's virtual. It's
great?
cool.
Great. Count me in.
All right, and then Amanda will be our alternate. I believe we're doing alternates as well. All right, sounds good. All right, does anyone object to those committee members? Myself, Matt, and Amanda as alternate. All right. That completes our reorganization. All right, we'll move on to approving the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Amanda?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Are we not doing finance committee now? We're coming back to that later. We didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can put that on an agenda for a bigger discussion.
Okay.
Because it says SU finance and there is really no PRCSU finance committee, so that I know of. I've never seen one. Okay, back to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Any amendments? Any questions on the consent agenda before we approve the agenda? Okay. All right, so I'll move, we approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Public comment. Is there anyone from the public tonight who wishes to speak? All right. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We'll look for a motion to approve all the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Meredith. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. All right, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Eric. So I'll, I feel like I said this all the time, but I will be brief. This is a very short period, in which our time is mostly consumed with town meetings, final budget preparations. I do want to say thank you to our community members in both Wells and Middletown Springs for coming out and voting, and showing their support of our schools and our staff and our students. So just want to say thank you. I know that it was a very difficult budget cycle for a lot of districts. Even within our SU, we did have one budget go down. But you know, as I said with other superintendents, it gives us an opportunity to go back and strategize and really take a look at being fiscally responsible and making sure that we are doing what's best for the kids and provide that. I do commend our board, our admin, our staff, you know, on the work they've done over the past year and the work that we have to do moving forward. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for all your work and for supporting our schools. It is much appreciated. I also like to congratulate Eric, Meredith on their reelection to the board, as well as congratulate and welcome Mary Plunkett on her appointment to the board. So, you know, it's going to be looking forward to working with all three of you as part of this board and moving things forward. Actually, a lot of work ahead of us this year with Middletown Springs as well as middle schools, and just really trying to build a future for our kids that we're all very proud of. In this packet, I did provide a rather lengthy, legislative reports. There are a lot of items that are on the agenda that we are keeping an eye on. So, you know, I think as we get towards the end of the session, we can have a bigger discussion about the impact of some of these. I know that we are keeping a close eye, obviously, on literacy, what happens there. You know, there are a couple of bills. We are looking at CTEs and the impact of that, because if you look in the copy, I do believe it's S304. Don't quote me on that to make sure I'm saying that right, but that they are looking at that, you know, all the way down to sixth grade, that you have to provide career education for sixth graders, as well as get into the tech ed center. So that's just something that we would have to keep an eye on, be aware of, and, you know, I have to work with Carol and Corey and what that looks like in our schools, as well as you know what that tech center would be. It would be Stafford. I know that they say if you're close to, say, you know, out of state tech center, you can look at that. But like I said, we don't really know the specifics of the details as of yet. We just see what's in writing, but these things could change as we move through the cycle. So there are just some items I want to keep an eye on. PCB, you know, it is tucked away in some of these bills that there may be a potential pause on PCB testing. So that could impact, you know, Wells and Middletown Springs moving forward, just in terms of what they're doing with PCB. So there's just a lot of items that we, myself, that you know, Carol, Corey, and the board, we just need to be aware of, just any sort of financial impacts, as well as just, you know, operational things. So, so I'm more happy to answer any questions if there are any at this time.
So they definitely delayed the testing of the two schools?
Well, it's being tucked within a bill. So that's, if that passes, then we'll have to wait and see what that pause means. There's been a discussion of a very short-term pause, which may not impact the schools because they may, you know, the pause may end and then we're right back up. We're also just trying to get clarification on what that pause means for schools that have already been tested, are in the middle of mitigation or remediation, what that looks like for them. So I think there's just a lot of answers still up there. So it just, it's a bit of a mess right now, but I think we just have to, as we do on a daily basis, just be prepared to adjust and pivot and do what we need to do. Just make sure our schools stay open and operational and our kids receive a high quality education. So.
Any questions?
And I'll just CTEs. I'm sorry, I shouldn't use acronyms, but that's career technical education centers. So like a Stafford Tech or North Hannaford. It's just you see this more in the middle to high school around pathways, but they are looking to expand these pathway options or offerings to down to 6th grade, so we can have these kids more career exploration. So.
Yeah, just curious. What's the next sort of educational assessment of our students? When do we get those next results?
You talk about the Fast Bridge map?
Yeah.
So in April, we'll provide those results for the board.
Okay.
Okay.
So
And
we'll
Corey,
see. Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, so we'll see those results. We'll get the results before the meeting, and then we'll
Yes,
talk about the meeting.
we'll include the results as part of the board packets, and then we'll work with Carol Corey and Lisa Madison, who oversees curriculum instruction for the SU. We'll be preparing a presentation which will view the results, take a look at where we're at, and also Carol and Corey will talk about next steps. So we look at areas of strengths, and if there are identified trends or I don't always like saying deficiencies, but just areas that need strengthened, and we look at what sort of plans we have in place to move that forward. So then Carol and Corey will go over all that next month.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any comments on S-284, the electronic device? So might as well call it the cell phone bill.
So this was a bill that's the earliest version was more expansive than this. I think they have whittled this down. I think my understanding is there will be a lot of information gathering on procedures and policies that schools and school districts already have in place and how effective they are. I think the intent behind this, and I think we all agree with this, is that we want to minimize the disruptions in schools with regard to cell phones. While there are some people believe that they can be used positively, but for the most part, that it is a distraction for a lot of our students and for our staff. So they're looking at what that may look like within our schools. So we're waiting to see where the next steps are. I know that the bill, when it was first introduced, it looks markedly different, and so we'll see what the next steps are there. But I think the bill was introduced was meant to support schools, with regards to cell phone use and videos. And I know it's something which we are talking about. I know that Carol Corey, even as an SU, we are looking at, the technology use in our schools and, the appropriate, I want to make sure we're using technology appropriately in our schools and based on developmental levels and obviously what a 3rd grader child should be exposed to as opposed to high school kids should be drastically different. And so I think just something as we had some things creep in during COVID that's got us through that difficult time, but now as we move away from COVID, we should be looking at a different type of education and not be so heavily reliant upon technology to educate our kids. So is a discussion that we will be discussing, as an admin team as well. So.
And I think it's the last time I seen it in this form, it's changed, and I think it's going down along the lines of the AOE will develop like a policy and also collect data on what districts have adopted that policy, and so it definitely is nothing like it was when it was introduced.
Right. As with most policies, they'll have a policy that if the district chooses not to, it doesn't have one of their own, then they will adopted model policy by de facto. So there will be a policy that will be put in place.
So when you're talking about, different, looking at, I don't know, effectiveness, of different, technology being used for instruction, is that what you're talking
I
about?
think one of the things that we want to discuss as an admin team, and just as we should be reviewing with, curriculum, everything, we should look at the effectiveness. And so if,
And would you also be looking at, the security? Because a lot of these
Yes.
concerns are about
yes,
data.
privacy,
being,
security, these are all things which we would be taking into consideration. That's a
Because-
question we have to ask as well.
Yeah.
So, sure.
Students, they're saying stealing data, personal data from students is actually more valuable
Right.
than stealing data
Right.
from adults.
Yep.
So,
And I've spoken with Greg Connors, your director, IT about this as well. And so these are all discussions that we will be having. They're important discussions for us to have.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
So we'll move on to full report.
All right. So for us, one of the things that we were really excited about in the month of February was Global School Play Day. It is something that the kids have celebrated in the past, and I had many kids request, as well as teachers request, that we celebrate this day again. It is celebrated worldwide on February 7th, but we opted instead to celebrate on the 16th, which was that Friday before break. And the goal of the day is to allow students the opportunity for unstructured play. It allows them the opportunity to practice skills such as sharing, problem solving, collaboration, communication with peers. So that was a big success. The kids seemed to really love having a day to just be kids. Carol and I are working with Sarah Taylor on our summer school plans. We have sent out a survey to gauge interest from families to see how many students we would potentially have. And now we're looking at staffing to determine if we can run separate programs in each of our schools or if we need to combine. Our 6th grade students held a basket raffle in the month of February. They did very well to date. They have raised enough money to fund their trip to Boston, and I believe have some funds left over for next year's class as well. Just a little bit about their trip. They are going to Boston from May 20th to May 23rd. And some of the activities that we're starting to plan for them is they're going on a whale watch through the Boston Aquarium. They take a historical walking tour around Boston, and then they go to the Plymouth museums and they stay overnight there. So that's something for them to look forward to. Scott and I have started having discussions about building improvements for the upcoming school year. We've started discussing and prioritizing things that we'd like to look into, and he's starting to get quotes for different things so that we can decide what we would like to start with for next year and what needs to, what can be pushed off a little bit. We do have an electrician that's coming on Friday to look at the outside lights, because that has been a big concern. Now that it's getting lighter, maybe a little bit less so, but so hopefully we'll figure out the lighting situation outside. And he's also currently confirming a quote. We lost several shingles in one of the windstorms this winter. So we're waiting on a confirmation for that quote to fix those. We wrapped up our winter sports program on March 4th or 5th, whatever that Monday was. It was a big success. We had almost every single child participate in either ice skating, skiing, or skating. I even got to get out and take a couple runs with the kids, and it was impressive to see the students' progress from week 1 on Bonanza to taking the Golden Express and going down Gold Rush. So they were a lot of fun to watch. We even got to see George up there. A plug for our next community engagement event on next Thursday, March 21st. We are holding our first annual knockout tournament. We've secured the Poultney High School girls basketball team to support that. So we would love people to come out and join us. It'll be 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock right here in Middletown. And then the final thing is, and I guess maybe we've we've kind of discussed this, but we have posted a classroom position. So within the next few weeks, we will be looking to start the process of interviewing candidates. We're just firming up our interview committee. So Meredith, we will be reaching out to you for that.
What teaching position is that for? Is that for the?
So Sherry McNeil has retired. We are uncertain of specifically what grade it will be. We're looking at grade configurations and what makes the most sense for numbers next year and combined classes where that works. So we've still got a few discussions to have. We have not firmed up what those grade configurations will be.
Okay. Some stuff to figure out. Okay, any questions for Cory?
No. Okay. Some of mine's probably going to sound a little bit like a repeat, but I just wanted to reiterate what Chris said, which was thanking board members that were reelected, new and actually outgoing as well. It's really important to our community's success that we have a very firm board. So very appreciative of that. I have also been talking to Scott about our summer projects, kind of prioritizing and looking at our budgets. As Cory said, we started planning for summer school and looking at staff. I am pretty sure that if we go with the proposal that went for Wells and what we have enough families that have responded and we have staff that are willing to work the program, which is really nice. Along those lines, we have posted 4 positions Meredith just looked at me like, oh, good. We posted 4 positions. We have our interventionist position. We have a classroom position. We had posted our art position and our PE position is posted again. So we'll be calling on you. We have gotten applicants on School Spring, trying to pull a committee together right now. So I'll reach out to you to maybe get better days for you.
Yep.
So
Well,
that we can set those things
I
up.
can be pretty flexible
Okay.
with a little bit of time.
Yes. So our 4th grade class had their second meeting with Up for Learning, and they looked at the data that was collected. They started to analyze and prioritize how they want to look at that data and how they want to utilize it to help all the grades in the school. And one of the things that they came up with is, in the past, we have done relationship mapping with the adults in the building. And one of their big takeaways today was that they feel like we need to do that again, just so that our students have identified the adults that they are very comfortable with. The event that we did, Cory and I did with both communities this past month, Let's Glow Read. We did a blacklight event, and I have to say it was probably the best attended that we've had. It was. And the kids had a really good time. We figured out how we would tweak it for the next time, but they're all pretty excited about having that event happen again. And one of the events was a track that was set up in our multi-purpose room that was all done under blacklight, and parents had to navigate their children through the track and stop at every corner and read a word. And I'm happy and proud to say that I had the fastest time with one of our students. It was a really fun event. I think it came out I think it was just one of those things that it turned out much better than we anticipated. So we had quite a few people there. We're starting our Girls on the Run is going to start practices on Monday and Thursday, starting on Monday. When is Velocity starting?
In April.
In April. And also, if you haven't seen, Shannon Moriarty did the YouTube videos for our schools, and they were posted, and they're really nice. She came into the schools, she did footage, and she recorded students and teachers about what's really special about the community. And I think she really kind of captured everything that is really special there. And finally, our students just finished a floor hockey unit, and They are now huge hockey fans, and I would say that it would almost be one of those things that they might enjoy like another team playing. They did a fantastic job, and it was just a lot of fun. They invited us in to see their final scrimmage. Mackenzie and the office and I went in, and it was really fun. They took it seriously. They followed all the rules to stay safe, and it was kind of exciting to watch.
You know, there's something that, some of the schools do is go up to Castleton to watch hockey games, and
Oh,
you
that
can
would be
get
fun.
like free admission for the kids if somebody put together something, you know, like for next year.
That's great to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have to. But that's it. It's been a good month.
All right. Any questions for Carol? All right, thank you. Moving on to finance. There is, just for information and just so it's not on the agenda, but in the finance, there's a budget forecast. Just wanted to, if you didn't see it in the material drive, I just figured I'd mention it. And did anyone have any questions about this? All right. So we'll move on to new business, sixth grade Boston field trip.
So I mentioned our sixth grade is going to Boston for 4 days and 3 nights. And I believe we need the board approval since it's an overnight field trip for them to take this trip. It is something they've done annually. I don't know how many years, but I believe John has done it. Last year at least, I'm not sure. COVID was in there, so I'm sure that impacted things. So they go down, they book an Airbnb, they stay at an Airbnb, and then they have different places that they go, they visit, museums, the whale watch, things like that.
Now, are they taking the train? Or
Down
are they-
into Boston?
Yeah.
No, so we have John will drive, and then we will have a second chaperone, which we believe will be a parent
Okay.
this year, and the two of them will drive into Boston with the kids.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Concerns?
I'll move we approve it.
Okay. Motion by George to approve the sixth grade trip to Boston. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Yeah.
Does our motion need to say the Middletown sixth grade because Wells is not going, or does it not matter? And then if Wells goes, we've done both at once.
We're not doing an overnight with our 5th and 6th graders
Okay.
here.
I just didn't know if we needed to cover that at the same time.
Right.
Okay. Moving on to school consolidation, cost savings projection. All right, so this discussion, as we've kind of had before, I think we want to kind of gather information on the cost saving, potential cost saving that we might have with consolidation. And I would imagine that probably won't have all that information, so we may need to have that brought forth later on. I guess, my thought behind this is obviously the first thing that comes to mind is potentially saving with staffing, but it really just depends. I don't know what that would look like, but we also talk about increased opportunity for students as well. So again, I'll open up for discussion as far as what we think that we could save. Amanda?
Chris, do you know the square footage requirements? Is that specifically around preschool or is it all of K-6? Like if we consolidated and we had a classroom that had 21 kids, does that classroom need to be bigger than the classroom that has 10 kids?
Preschool has a different set of regulations than the rest of the school, so pre-K does have a square foot requirement, and I don't know offhand what it is. We can have the information for the April board meeting, but the regular classrooms are not held to that same standard.
Okay, so there's no square footage for other classes other than preschool, like requirement or guidance around that or anything.
I mean, I to be honest, I think as we look at our classrooms and you look at 20 students, you would not be, pushing it, but I think you'd have to really look at the size of the classroom, because I do think 20, I really think you'd have to look at classroom by classroom in each of our schools. And I think that's where sometimes when you just go by square footage requirements, an odd configuration may not work. So if a classroom is more rectangular, putting 20 kids in a rectangular room might be a little bit different than putting, kids in a square classroom that has the same square footage, but just because of the way the class is laid out, it's a little bit different. So I think this is part of, myself, Corey, Carol, Lewis, we could provide whatever information the board would want. But I think it, just depends on what it is that you're looking for. We could really look at square footage for your classroom, what would make sense, but I think it's just how you want to do this. I mean, really just.
Yeah. Just looking at the numbers, I felt like we really need to get a handle on that first, because if the growth pattern continues, I just want to make sure we're looking at the space before we ask too much about the cost savings if we can't fit them that way. That was all.
Well, my recommendation to the board is, if the board is looking to explore the possibility of a pre-K in both buildings and a K-3 in one, a 4 through 6 in another, then under the, direction of, like, terms of looking at, financial cost or maybe particular financial savings, but also I think expanding the opportunities for our students through the programming and courses and, just variety of other things. I think that's where we start to do a research in terms of what that would look like through this layout. But I think we kind of have to have a goal in mind in terms of where we want to be by what time, and this could be something like a facilities committee could work on and then bring back to the board for review. Or so like I said, having done this in other states as a staff member, as administrator, said you need a lot of direction on the front end in terms of where you're heading, as opposed to just going down this path and see where it takes you. So, but I think that's where, like, the board has discussed this, and I think it's something which they want to consider. But what is the board? What's the information they're looking for in terms of next steps, and then as well as community support.
Yeah, Matt.
Hey, so I remember Lewis giving us this documentation, like I think back in like October, where he gave us, some cost benefits of doing this, and it wasn't a huge benefit. Like I would be for this and I've said this before, but like if it's going to give some benefit for the students. So for me, that might be, figuring out our issues, staffing subs, bringing language back as a potential class for the kids. I don't know, other opportunities for the students. So if there's a way that we can afford to do that, then I'm on board. But if we're keeping both schools and combining classes, combining grades from both schools, I don't see it being a huge savings, but it does give us more control, I guess, at the end of the day, where we can make cuts if we need to. But that's me and my soapbox. I'm not sure what the point I was making. I guess maybe I just don't see the huge benefit. But I think it is a step in the right direction we want to take. I don't know.
So Matt, you are correct. Lewis, I worked on some figures. It may have been in October. I'm not quite sure what month, but I probably right around that time. And you're right that similar conversation we're having with Quarry Valley. We've had in other districts where there is a cost to operating schools. And so as we look at this model, we're still operating 2 schools. We look at our staffing projection would be relatively the same. So from a cost perspective, there would be very little to no savings in this model, but the board will also have to take a look at considering, and I'll just look at, Corey's as next year has a kindergarten class of 3 students. And one of the discussions that she has to have is from a developmental standpoint, does it make sense for her to try to go a K1? And I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of combining classrooms. I think I think developmentally, it just takes a very special individual. We have had some very strong teachers who've been able to do this, but it's not the best practice. But in this particular case, you have 3 students here at kindergarten. To put them with the first grade group, development is not always the best. You look at it from a social, emotional, academic, it's not great practice. If we look at combining those kindergarten across, 2 buildings, we have a larger cohort, development is more appropriate. You look from, so there are benefits there. So I think those are discussions I think the board should be undertaking is as you create some larger cohorts, the fact that I'm not gonna, but the 6th grade trip can be taken in 2 cars. That says how small the cohort really is. But if we combine in a normal year, you double the size, and from a social, from an academic, there are a lot of positives that could be discussed around that. So.
Matt?
That's super interesting that the kindergarten class of 3, and I wonder if there's an opportunity to do like a step that's between those 2 options, which is maybe having busing between the schools and being more fluid in students going from one school to the other. So we could shift and move between the schools, keep the have them both have a first grade, second grade. But in the instance where one school can't fill another grade, they can those students can get bused to Wells, or the Wells students in 5th grade that can't fill a sizable class can get bused to Middletown. But then it's, I guess, also a question for the administrators about staffing. Like, what do you do with the teacher that doesn't have a class anymore? So yeah, anyway, more unanswered questions.
Mary?
Yeah, just really quickly, I would be interested to see any feedback that Corey received, and then Wells as well, about students coming into our pre-K classes. I don't want to jump the gun and say that we had like a surge starting with our family in 2018, and then we had COVID, and Matt's family and so many other families that I know locally that kind of came to the area. I'm wondering if that kind of subsided a little bit, but just going forward, I wonder if since Corey's sending out the beacon of hey families, or if you anticipate your little ones coming into pre-K, sign up and let us have that information. I'm just wondering, maybe going forward we can kind of see the trend of what we're looking at in the future.
So we did hold our pre-K screening already, and we anticipate up to 10 kids for next year, and that would be both 3rd and 4th grade. or excuse me, 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. Pushing them a little bit.
And we did do our pre-K screening as well, and we're told we could send out the letters to families. We have and hold 15 spots. We have 13 that are definitely filled. We usually hold 2 until like just for late people coming in, or if we need a spot for someone with special needs. So, but we definitely let 13 in ours.
Okay, yeah, and I think if we're looking at numbers, that's pretty typical of Middletown. I feel like we're usually, at least 3 or 4 kids under Wells. And then going forward, that'll be, not now obviously, but spaced over, 1 or 2 grades after they get out of our pre-K system going into K and first. So,
Both the principal reports have lists of the current enrollment and the projected enrollment for next year. And I'm a fan of larger classes, not because of fewer instructors, but because I think it's a better outcome for the students as a whole. When you have these really small classrooms, you're very limited in what you got. And some years that can be an amazing group, and in other years it's a challenge group and a larger cohort of 15 to 20 students in a class is a lot easier for the teacher as well as the students. So I think it's really important for us to be considering these consolidation options as hard as they are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, just even talking about with the kindergarten being 3 next year, that kind of, combining the classes and, or into one class, kind of takes out that really small class size where you have to make those hard decisions. But one thing that, and I was thinking about as far as what I think would be good to know is if we're going to look at the consolidation and we're going to have, pre-K 1 through 3 in one school and pre-K 4, 5, 6 in another school. Obviously it wouldn't be combined classes. We would have these classes, and so it would look like that. But also, would it also have, provide the opportunity to have the need for like a full-time art teacher, or for as far as like staffing goes, and so I know that we have like even for PE, what is it? It's like 0.4 in each school. Would this, if we were to look at this kind of model, and this is kind of information that I don't know if it can be answered now or if it, needs to come back, but with the school, with these larger class sizes, would there need to be full-time, like PE teacher or full-time in each school? Because those kind of, if we're gonna look at what we're gonna save, but also, potentially, expand, for students, I think that'd be good to know. And I kind of mentioned this before too, and I don't know how well it would be received by everyone, but there's also potential going to 8th grade. Not a lot of people are a fan of that, but there would be savings in secondary tuition for sure.
Science, math, and sports. I'll just throw that right out there.
There's cost.
Okay. Like I said.
And this was, we discussed this when actually we considered merging with Rutland Town.
Yeah.
During the merger, and
Okay.
yeah, and part of that was clawing back 8th graders, 7th and 8th.
That I didn't know. I did not know that. I
That-
know I wasn't part of the merger.
Yes,
process.
before the Act 47 brought in the standalone option. Rutland Town was one of those schools that was desperately searching for somebody they had to merge with.
Mhm.
I think they're the only K through 8 option we
Yeah.
looked at. But yeah. But the sciences and the math teachers, the science facility, for one thing, the labs that you would have to build,
Yeah.
as well as getting the teachers, which are already a difficult teacher to get, were among our challenges, let alone the fact that we were looking at Rutland Town.
And I understand too that with our secondary options, if we had students stay until 8th grade, then they'd be going into high school, right into high school. So there's that, I guess, that acclimation and I don't know, but I understand that. And I almost said though,
But you would be considering putting like a 5 through 8 in one school and a pre-K or, so it would be sort of a middle school option.
Yep.
But I don't,
yeah, it's tough because I know there's the junior seniors high schools that our students have the option to go to. At least from my kids' experience, when they get into 7th grade, there's that period where they're getting used to going to classes and how would that look in our elementary schools for 7th and 8th grade? Would they still be combined to one? So I understand that. And before you said anything, I almost said, can we look, can we see some numbers on what the savings would be and what the cost would be? But again, this is just me throwing out ideas, and if the board's doesn't think it's a good idea, that's fine.
I think another thing to think about is, or to consider talking to, is Rutland Town to have an idea of what their challenges are in providing that 5 through 8 program. It's not, it's a lot.
But they're all in one school though, too. Okay.
But anyway.
Matt? Sorry, I got his hand up.
Hey, it's all right. So I've read a few articles about how looping is very beneficial for student growth, which is where a teacher teaches the same group of students in maybe a couple years in a row or 3 years in a row. Potentially, if we were to do a reorg, we could look at it not from the perspective of like we need to staff a 1st grade teacher. We could look at it from the point of view of we need to staff a teacher that could loop with these students. So less of a strict 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, but more of like a class specific. So if in 1 year where we don't have a lot of students, that could be maybe an easier way of like managing the ups and downs of a small school.
Amanda?
I also wonder if it's worth, looking at this consolidation completely differently. And maybe even as soon as next year, if we say we're not combining any classes and classes that would need to be combined are put in the appropriate building to prevent combining of anybody. The kindergartners come to Wells, the 2nd or 3rd graders go to Middletown or vice versa, the 5th or 6th, and just do a fluid thing for a year before we officially make the change. And that would also help us gather information.
Mary?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. The only thing I think of is like practically the busing. I know that busing is it's definitely something that consumes some time and attention in the Wells budget. And so I just feel like that would be something that we have to think about for Middletown. And then, just having, seeing our road Garen Road. I'm not sure a bus could get up, get up at this point, but just logistically, that whenever I bring up consolidation to other parents or friends, that's something that always comes up as far as that goes.
Yeah, for sure. I know Wells is not doing back road pickup right now. We're doing main road pickup, but possibly that could be something that's as simple as Middletown starts at one time and Wells starts 20 minutes later, or vice versa, to allow for the same buses to get back and forth or something. Maybe it's I don't know. Like, obviously we would need to look into it, but maybe it could just be start and end times are a little different between the buildings to allow for them to get from A to B. I just think that if we did that sooner rather than later, it would help us collect information and it would get rid of our combining classrooms.
Yeah, I was going to say something about transportation too. I know Lewis provided some information on last fall around going to one bus and potentially adding a bus. But I think what we're talking about would be a lot bigger transportation piece to have all the students that are coming to, from one town to one school. And so I think that's a huge piece of the cost projection.
And I do want to remind, we've approved a budget for next year. And so while I'm not opposed to trying new things, but if we're looking at transportation, there is additional cost that has not been budgeted, and
Yeah.
we just have to take that into consideration.
Would it be saved if we don't fill the positions that were mentioned earlier in the night because we wouldn't need them by sharing these classrooms? So maybe they would outweigh each other instead of filling that staff position, the classrooms position that was mentioned, or, another position, possibly those would wash each other out.
I don't know, for next year, I think a lot of people would not be happy with the March decision to completely change it. And as we talked about over the last few months, this is like an exploration. Like, I think we really need to really dig into, as we have on the agenda, cost saving projection, think of things that are really going to tie into that for our timeline. Because as we move forward, before any decisions are made, we're collecting this information really. But I think like the transportation piece, that I think is going to be huge. I think the cost for transportation on this level is going to be a lot more than what we're doing for Wells. So I think, if we can have that information, at least one, that part down the road, Matt?
I was gonna say, could we pilot it just for that kindergarten class? I mean, we don't need a giant bus. We could have a private or hire someone private to drive kids from. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, Matt, I think that's something which, in talking with Corey, that's something which one of the options would be recommend to the board in April was that we look at something like this, of explore this possibility just out of what's best for the kids and what that cost may be. If there are 3 students, we could transport 3 students in a van down and back each day, or if they were say going to Wells or vice versa. So there is a pilot, and I think that's, if you're doing something based on need, and this is a situation based on need and what's best for the kids. I think these are a lot of great ideas. This is stuff that excites me. I've been part of school redesigns for many years, but I also know that there's a lot of messaging that needs to be done with community members in terms of why we're doing this, what the next steps are. It's not something which really is hashed out in one night. I think they're just that, but with the kindergarten, that is something, Matt, that's a very real possibility, because we're sitting there with 3 kindergarten students, and Corey and we've discussed how a combined classroom is just not right for these students developmentally for both kindergarten students and the first grade, and really what are other options. And I'll say this as a parent, I don't know if I'd want my daughter in a third grade class or just her and two other students. I think there are benefits of having a larger cohort, and I think that's just something which we have to work through. So that is a possibility, Matt, yes, without adding cost to our budget.
Are there Greater Rutland County vehicles that could
Yes,
possibly be used?
yes,
So
we
need a
are.
driver then. Okay.
You would look at someone transporting, we do this in other GRCSU schools where we'll have someone who will transport students for a variety of reasons, and we will pay them just a stipend to do that. So good. And there are SU vehicles available for this.
If it's under a certain amount of students, you don't need a bus. It's not considered a bus, right?
Correct. Right. And just make sure seatbelts and, there are just certain provisions. So we have to look at but I know that we do transport students in our vans.
If I may, thinking back to those rough numbers that Lewis threw at us, whatever month that was, with some staff elimination and the addition of a bus going back and forth, we came out a little bit ahead. And if our end goal here is to make bigger cohorts for these upper grades as well, that's going to improve the education, their education. It's going to make it easier on the staff involved too, make them more effective. And some of the things I've been listening to and reading about what happened with school budgets, don't think Montpelier might not come in and start forcing us to do some of this stuff. I would rather manage it ourselves and be ahead of it than to have them come down and say you're going to lose your small school grant or something like that if you don't take action. So if we can make a 3 to 5 year plan or something, I think it'll be in our hands. It'll be in our control. So we need to look at this.
And to piggyback on that, and Matt, to go back to your question, if we were to explore the kindergarten model, we would probably not fill, we just look at through attrition, we would not fill that position at Middletown next year. And so the salary, we'd actually have a savings, because transportation would not be that cost. It'll give us some money to do some other things with as well. So we would actually be saving saving money in this process. And that's not the reason to do it. The impetus is really what's best for these kids. But
Well, and hopefully by managing this ourselves and having a long range plan, we kind of soften that blow or see who's interested in switching grades or who's coming up for retirement or something like that. So we make it hurt as little as possible.
Question to piggyback off of what George was saying and Chris, what you were saying. Since there's so much energy about being better with budgets and looking at all the schools, is there any resources that the state could give us? I'm not saying like them directing us to do things, but like just facilitate this process or give us ideas and give best practices and sort of help us project manage this or thought leadership, any of that. Christy, are you aware? Could you ask, see if there's, they could.
I will ask. I know that there has been discussion, but as George said, you're going to, when Governor Scott has messaged publicly, when he's now said consolidation is one aspect. He's talked about the state taking over budgets, that these are discussions that are not being made in isolation, that these are discussions that are taking place in Montpelier, and a state model or suggestions of what consolidation looks like. And there are a variety of forms. I think it really boils down to is that, we'll be discussing this at Corey Valley, is just the rationale of operating 3 high schools. And while our taxpayers may support that, but you may have other individuals in the state who sit there and say, well, but as they're operating 3 high schools, that's, that taps into the ed fund, that raises the ed fund. And so,
There's tapped into.
right, and so that's where
ratio,
these
so,
decisions, it's not just whether or not the local taxpayers will pay for and support it. It really is that bigger, it's how education's funded in Vermont. It's a very complex process that it really is this, it's you don't operate in isolation or vacuum. I mean, so I'll reach out, Matt, but I really do believe that it is something which, as George said, that's something that we need to take control of. And I know that in other states, in Illinois, New Jersey, there really wasn't much help that came from the state. There really was, you would hire, outside consultants who had experience in looking at school redesigns, look at reshaping things. And so there are individuals that could come in from an outsider's perspective and just look at things differently, but it goes back to, community needs and community wants as well. So there's a lot of forces at play. And I think it go back to what George is saying, that, if you looked at the article, you've heard, and there are individuals who are, and like I said, I don't think the Wellspring Board I think they've been fiscally responsible. I think they've taken a look at what's appropriate to operate two schools, but there is a cost. And I think we'd love to see our kids have more. But I think that's part of this discussion is as we look at what a consolidation would do and how our students would benefit from merging of resources and whatever that may be. And I think that's the ultimate conversation is we want our kids to benefit from this. So.
Yeah, and we don't want to wait
Correct.
3 years, 5 years down the road, and then it's too late to start this conversation. Amanda?
Sorry, I was just looking back and I'm upset that we missed this before tonight, but that's neither here nor there. In looking back, it looks like all of the other classes are pretty decent size, except 5th and 6th at Middletown are 6 students. Has any of that, is that still true as of today, or are any of the other classes kind of small that we should be looking at before we get to June and not March that we might have missed? Corey gave this to us in January. I don't know why we didn't notice it then. It was there again in February, but has anything changed since then that another class might be smaller as well that we should try to do at the same time?
So the numbers in my report for today are up to date. They're the most current numbers that I have. So I change the numbers if we increase or decrease in enrollment every month. So kindergarten is our current kindergarten. So next year's first grade has 7. And then 4th, 5th, and our current 6, which is not an issue for next year, are all 6. And I've not heard anything that would lead me to believe that those numbers would change next year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like our superintendent and principal are already having conversations about this small class, right? Or kindergarten. So as far as that goes, I think they'll figure it out. And well, and I only say that because just before I came in, a parent asked me about the small class for next year. And I was like, I didn't know, and that's kind of that's not in our realm of responsibility. That's why we hire principals and superintendents. So.
And if you look, the kindergarten class at Wells next year is projected at 5 with potentially 6.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. So, when I think about what this might look like in our schools, doing this consolidation and splitting things up, I think what it might look like is kind of like everything too, how will sports look, how will the staffing look? I mean, I think there's a lot of things to consider. And I'm just trying to think, how we can turn this into like what the cost will be, and I don't know if anyone else has anything to add. I mean, I think
So Eric, the numbers that were provided back in October, I can reach out to Lewis and we can work with Carol and Corey, just work on like a mock scenario and we can have that for the board in April just to either confirm those numbers that we provided back in the fall are still true or a more updated version if you're okay with that.
Yes, I was just gonna suggest if we can have like kind of a mock setup, what staffing would look like, what the transportation piece would look like. I can't really think of anything really else that would fall under the consolidation. I mean,
So I will ask Carol, Corey, myself and Lewis will get together and we will look at what a model would look like if a pre-K in both and then a K through 3 and a 4 through 6 and 1, and then look at staffing and just operations and just provide a basically just cost outlay for the board to consider. We will not look at projecting new positions or, because I know, but those are all things I think the board can take a look at and discuss.
Yeah.
Based on that, so.
yeah, and that's why like earlier I kind of mentioned too, as far as not creating new positions, but expanding on the ones that we have and, some of those half positions, making them full-time positions. Like I said, just ideas. I don't know how that would look, but it would make sense. And then that, potentially it would, just provide better education, more opportunities for students, as we discussed before. So, Matt? Oh.
Well, I had a question. I guess talking about how we could sort of flex and if it potentially, I guess it doesn't really. I guess I was wondering if there was a step in between where we could do this flex thing like we're doing with kindergarten. So a school wouldn't necessarily have grades pre-K through, third grade or 4th through 6th. It could be just like whatever the configuration is that year and a mix of ages and grades, not necessarily sequential, but it's yeah. So I don't know if that's important to make that point and whether we should be flexible or if we all think that, it should probably be sequential. I don't know. Does that make sense? I know it's late at night.
So Matt, I think there'd be two scenarios. One where there is that fixed model, which is the pre-K, K through 3, pre-K 4 through 6, and a flex model, which based on need and as we look at bubbles that come through the system, that if there's a smaller cohort that works its way through, that we look at with that smaller cohort how to better handle that situation with this flex model as opposed to moving the whole both schools to that. Correct? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like maybe there's a step in between. We do the full separation. Maybe there's a staged effort here, and like the in between plan is that like we just merged, 2 grades or something like that at a time versus doing the whole thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but like a halfway merger.
Well, I think Matt, those are good decisions. I think that as the board explores this and talks with the community, I think you'll kind of suss out what those different scenarios and what the next steps would be. And that's why I think that as we look at next school year, there is that discussion around this kindergarten class and what do we do with it. That's kind of a separate discussion. And then as we look at the bigger picture, I think there are a lot of conversations need to be had about what this looks like in terms of 5 years from now. Where are we? Or 3 years from now, where are we? And what are the steps we take to get there? And that's from just a physical layout as well as quality of programming, offerings that we have, just staffing, whatever they may be. I think there's some great discussions that the board can have and engage with the community on about this and the staff as well.
And I see opportunities potentially for community forums too, to get some of that, community feedback potentially, because I think it'll be important. But down the road, obviously, because there's a lot of information to know before decisions are made, I would say. Okay. So we'll do that. We'll have that information brought back and continue the discussion. All right. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to policy.
Eric, I just want to clarify. So then the board's asking what you need from me, Lewis, and the admin, or just a financial workup of just that pre-K, K-3 and pre-K 4 through 6 model, what that may look like and the cost. So I know we provided in October or an updated version of that, correct?
My thought was behind it too. I'm not sure if the transportation piece that he provided would cover this kind of restructuring,
We'll place that in there as well, transportation costs to move students across to both.
And again,
I mean, there's something to consider, which is, Middletown, I mean, they gave up their bus. If you asked the Wells community to do that too, and they could get their children to the school, then you're just busing from school to school, which is a lot easier to work out than trying to, because I'm not thinking you're going to want to ask Middletown, have buses go to, the town doesn't work as well, and it's not, I don't know, I bet it's going to be worth it. They're already bringing their students here. So why wouldn't we just send them on a bus?
right. No, that's a really good point too. And
I mean, it makes the whole thing actually possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still struggling with time differentials and start times and all that stuff, but
I mean, even in Wells and bad weather, they don't do the full route, right?
Well,
go
no,
to the
they
end of the road
don't.
and pick
No.
up and
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
So.
And that's standard, I think it's standard amount, main road pickup.
yes, right.
They
You're
They
going
wouldn't
to
be
main
picking up many
roads.
places. up
Paved
here.
roads.
There's a couple of them.
and that would be a huge change.
Yeah, it is.
But
It's all.
it would make more sense. And obviously it would be a harder change for Wells. But we talked about before, with the transportation piece, even having pickup locations as well.
Yeah, right.
Go down to one bus and have pickup locations.
Yeah, you're
But-
not going to every house on the route.
Yeah.
You're
which
going to
takes-
bus stops.
takes a lot of time. But no, I definitely think that's a good point and, something to consider. Because again, I think that if you were to go pick up every student
I think they could.
and then transport, it would be astronomical.
Be an awful lot of time on the bus.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the other thing to add to that is, just other things that might, could be a cost factor too. And like I mentioned before too, what the school will look like and, will the sports programs change? You're going to have larger classes, instead of having a co-ed class, you know what I mean? So I don't know, it's for sports. And that was just something I thought about. And I don't know if that's going to be a huge piece, but, again, the first things that come to mind are staffing and transportation, but if there's other things that we're not aware of, or I'm not aware of.
Well, and it'll be the tolerance of the community, whether or not they're willing to go for it.
Yes. Yep. Matt, final thoughts?
Yeah, just when we get that budget, I'm not sure how this is possible since we only know the incoming pre-K, but if it's possible to extend it past for a few years, model it, not just for next year, but a few years down the road as well. That'd be great.
Yeah. Matt, I will try our best, but those are difficult numbers for us to procure. So we could ask families to just see if they'd be able to offer up that information. That's something which maybe Carol and Corey can work on. Like if he has a younger sibling, so. And I'll be honest, it all depends on what the state does with early ed moving forward. Last year during the legislative session, they talked about mandatory pre-K for all 4-year-olds. That was, placed on hold, which I found was interesting that they're a mandate pre-K, but kindergarten was still non-compulsory. So it really is as ebb and flow. So tell you what the numbers are. We can kind of guesstimate bubbles, but we'll do our best.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, on the policy, we just have 4 policies that need to be adopted. They were warned for adoption last month. So motion to adopt E9, animals on school grounds, E14, fiscal management, general financial accountability, E15, capitalization of assets, and H5 Title I.
I'll make that motion to approve them.
All right, motion by Meredith to adopt these policies. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
All right, motion carries unanimous. All right, general public comments. Does anyone have any public comments tonight? Okay. Our next meeting is April 10th. Any agenda items, email myself or Chris. And we'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Mary, as our tradition, this is your first meeting.
Great. I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mary to adjourn at 7:52. All those in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Before we hang up, I think you and I both have some survey results for Amanda.